All right, our top focus at this hour, India's cut to goods and services tax GST rates kick in. Expectations are for lower GST rates on everyday goods to translate to an increase in consumer demand. The success of the government's decision, though, hinges on businesses passing on the cuts to consumers. In this next report, we decode how the process of transmission to consumers usually takes time and the real benefits for an average consumer. Take a look.
Finance Minister announced a slew of reforms to the GST rates after council discussion on the recommendations from a group of ministers. A CRISIL report shows that the GST rate cuts are said to benefit 11 of the top 30 consumption items. That covers about a third of the monthly spend of an average Indian consumer. These 11 items include essential milk products, automobiles, beauty services and processed foods, which have seen a surge in demand in recent years. The average GST rate will be lower for a majority of food and household items from 11% to 9% from Monday. They will attract either 0% or a 5% tax rate. The middle class is likely to gain the most, given greater tax relief on essentials and lower value items. The GST cut complements the income tax relief announced for this segment in the budget earlier this year. The GST rate has been reduced across all categories of cars. The tax rate for entry-level small cars has been lowered from 29% to 18%. The effective rate on premium cars too will be lower as the compensation cess has been removed. A CRISIL report estimates an 8 to 9% fall in the average prices of the small car segment, a 3.5% fall in mid-sized sports utility vehicles and a 6.7% fall in premium SUVs. The rate on standard two-wheelers has been cut from 28% to 18%, lowering their prices by nearly 8%. The purchase value limit for availing 5% GST on clothing has also been raised to 2,500 rupees. That will provide additional relief for middle-income families. CRISIL noted the differentiation is deliberate. The reforms are designed to give relief on mass consumption goods while shoring up revenues through higher taxes on luxury items. While more than 20% of the consumer price index, the CPI basket is covered by GST cuts. Only 1.2% of goods in the CPI basket face a hike. The share of items with zero GST has risen to 47% from 35.3% previously. The GST reforms come when consumption needs to be supported through tax relief, lower borrowing costs and income tax cuts announced earlier this year. Consumption accounts for 57% of India's GDP. Business Bureau, WION The World is one.
And to get us a more comprehensive picture as to how the country is gearing up to adopt and adapt to the changes, we're now being joined live by our correspondent Dharamjot Kaur from New Delhi, who's joining us from outside a hospital. Dharamjot, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, healthcare and insurance is in sharper focus. Medicines are cheaper, insurance premiums are now GST free. I'm sure you've had some chance to speak to some of the families who are dealing with these medical expenses. What is the sentiment like?
Well, there's two categories that we're talking about here, Hem, even when it comes to medicines. One is the 33 life-saving drugs that are now GST exempt. So that's a lot of relief for families that are dealing with loved ones who are undergoing chronic ailments and a lot of treatment, intensive treatment for very serious or rare diseases. On the other hand, there is a relaxation of GST on a lot of majority drugs, which has now been brought down to 5%. On very regular medicines as well. So again, a lot of medicines that are procured over the counter, daily use medicines, bandages, gaze, a lot of other basic medical items, all of these also now have a reduced GST rate to them. To bring this to our attention and to bring it to the attention of the viewers here, it's important to note that the government oversight bodies that are overseeing the implementation of these new GST rates, they have asked both buyers and consumers to ensure that even the stock that is currently in the market at the chemists, at the hospitals, they need to be supplied at the new rates, which will reflect the reduced GST percentage. So this is of key importance to note over here, in case there's anyone going out to buy basic medicine with reduced rates today. they can get them at the new GST rates, which has been reduced to 5%. So even if this stock was produced before at older rates, the customers will still get it at the reduced rate today, irrespective of what the MRP on the tablets or the medicine says. That's one important thing to note. Another important thing to note is I've been standing outside this cancer hospital. I've spoken to some people who are undergoing treatment, their loved ones who are here to accompany them. And their main cause of concern is, as we hear from a lot of families, is how expensive drugs are for these for diseases like cancer. And so in effect you have cancer medication in that list of 33 life-saving drugs which are now tax exempt, GST exempt. And then there are 3 other cancer medications which now have a reduced GST and brought down to 5%. So in effect, when I was speaking to some medical staff as well, they said this could have an impact of anything between 15,000 to 20,000 rupees per dosage of treatment, which is a significant amount, give or take, because these treatments all in all can be extremely expensive to afford, especially for middle class families. So there is a sense of relief, but there is again, like with other industries, there is a caveat in terms of how will this amount reflect at the end of the day. Will the entire reduced GST come to the benefit of the customer or the patients? That needs to be seen, which will something that we'll get clarity on in the coming few days.
Absolutely, Dharanjot. In fact, I was just going to come to that as well. You've raised a very pertinent issue there as well. And that's where I wanted to understand, perhaps you could give us a better sense of how things are panning out. Is there more of a sense of cautious optimism or confusion about how quickly these benefits will reach, especially given the festive season that's right around the corner? So what are you seeing in terms of, what are you being able to gauge in terms of that?
Again, the response is mixed. As I mentioned about the medicines, the oversight bodies have made it clear that the impact needs to be immediate. But when it comes to other goods, clothes, shoes, other items that are purchased during the festive season, cars, for example, that have seen a massive reduction in the GST rates, even the sellers are now trying to understand how to implement those rates. And this is a big question, especially for stock that is already in the market before the deadline of today. So the new stock that will come into the market after day, the rules are very clear on that front. The overhaul is very clear on that front. But the stock that is already present in the market before the new GST reforms have been implemented, the confusion is for that. So the sellers, the showrooms, they're waiting for a complete trickle-down effect in terms of clarity from the management, from the bosses, to give them complete clarity in terms of what rate are we going to follow now. There are some shops, some clothes and some shoe shops here that are trying to now implement GST immediately on their own by ensuring an additional discount, which was a very interesting thing that I saw in some of the markets here in Delhi. So say for example, if the rate has reduced from 12% to 5%, that caveat of 7% reduction is now being reflected by some shopkeepers as an additional festive discount, since they are not able to implement GST on paper as per the procedure. So to ensure immediate implementation, they're giving it as a discount at the moment. But how the official process will fall through, that is going to take a few days, if not weeks here. So this is where things currently stand in terms of retail. Even e-commerce websites are really trying hard to ensure that they can reflect GST as soon as possible, because this is going to end up benefiting the customers, especially in festive season when we see so much footfall and so much purchase.
Right. Well, Dharanjot, you pretty much summed it up for us. Thank you so much for joining us with all those updates. Of course, as you mentioned, we're still waiting to see how this pans out. Thank you so much for all the updates for now. And for latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.